Tell me your worst online dating story is a question I often ask people, and honestly, the answers, especially from women, would make you want to never leave the house again. A few years ago, Sean Cook decided to do something about it. An IT industry veteran who was horrified by watching his 60-year-old mom being catfished and disappointed routinely online, he launched the T app, which is not a dating app, but rather a dating safety app for women. T allows you to complete background checks, reverse phone number searches, and reverse image searches with the click of a button through the safety and privacy of the app. And it also gives you access to a chat forum where you can share your experiences with other women who, just like you, are out here looking to date intentionally, but also safely. Sean has learned a lot about what women endure in the modern dating world, and it has opened his eyes. It goes far beyond his mom. On today's podcast, we're talking about the statistics of fraudulent profiles and romance scams and the pushback to the app from men who get very uncomfortable about the idea of a public forum where women can spill the tea on their behavior. Sean says the T platform receives about one legal threat a week from someone who doesn't appreciate having their behavior called out. But T is not backing down because he reasons, and I agree, that truly there are tons of wonderful men out there looking for love. And if you have nothing to hide, then you really should have nothing to worry about. A couple of years ago, after the pandemic, I decided to go on a date on Bumble. The person seemed very nice. I sit down with him, and one of the first things he says to me was, I don't want to make it weird, but I feel like I should tell you this because I'm a father and I have two daughters and they're both in college. You shouldn't put your first name on the dating app. And I said, why? And he said, do you know it took me 2 seconds to Google you and find out every aspect of your life? Now, my name is Poonam. So there's not a billion Poonams in New York City, but there's not one either. Right?
Right. Yes.
So I said to him, well, what's the big deal if you can Google me? I mean, if we're going to meet in person, you're going to know my name anyway. He's like, I just feel like as a dad, I should be telling you. I said, oh, no, that's very nice of you, whatever. We go on with the date. The end of the evening, I get home. I turn on the news. First thing on the news from Connecticut that day, it says, woman meets man on Bumble, goes on first date, found dead the next morning. I was like, all right, that's a sign from God. So that's not a happy story. But it got me thinking about safety. So, all of that is to say, in my dating experience, I have not really come across anyone misrepresenting themselves materially when I've met them in person. My theory is that is mainly because my system is very impatient. I kind of match. I text for maybe 3 or 4 days. And if we're not meeting within 2 weeks, you're never hearing from me again because who has that kind of time?
Yeah.
And I think it saves me a lot of hassle. But my
100%.
focus has been on meeting who I think I'm meeting ASAP and then determining chemistry and compatibility. It has not really been on safety.
Right.
That said, start with some statistics for this podcast for context. The Pew Research Center, I think, said 30% of U.S. adults claim to have used a dating app, up to 48% of people age 18 to 29, which sounds about right. However, 10% of new dating profiles created are believed to be fake. 54% of online daters report encountering a catfish. Male profiles are 21% more likely to be fake than female profiles. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. And 68% of users report encountering someone who has lied about their identity, including in real life. Now, this can be as innocuous as someone shaving a few years off their age or, a few pounds off their body, or as dangerous as someone with truly a history of physical violence, pedophilia, God knows, right? Someone who now can follow you home. Again, living in New York City is not something you worry about so much because nobody can get into my house. But in 2023, you launched the T app, which, to be clear, is not a dating app. It's a dating safety app. And this was inspired by your experience watching your mom try online dating, which was really what got me fascinated because I'm a single mom with a son who is super protective. Yeah. And he's a potato. He's like a tiny little thing. And meanwhile, he thinks he can protect me. I loved that. And I wanted to start with, tell me about your mom. What's her story?
My mom is a wonderful, very kind woman who has really made me and my brother her number one priority, I would say, as long as I've been alive. So, about 10 years or so ago, they separated and ultimately got divorced. And my dad eventually remarried. My mom has stayed largely single, during that time. And she has, had dates with different men over the years that she kind of met organically, through her community and things of that nature. And she's 60 now, 61 now, 60. And yeah, she said, "Hey, look, I'm really ready to find a partner. Like I'm ready to really put myself back out there." And she lives in a more rural community. So she said, I think I want to try dating apps because it'll just increase my aperture, if you will. Like I'll be able to meet more people with some technology because I'm not meeting enough people organically. And so that's how a lot of this all started.
So did your mom tell you, "Hey, buddy, I'm ready to start dating again and I'm going to go online. I need to prepare you." Mom is about to set up a dating profile?
That's pretty much exactly what happened. So my mom was visiting me at one point, and she told me all this, and then I was like, "Oh, I'll help you set up your dating profile. Finally, your tech nerd son can finally do something he's good at. I don't know how to like change a tire, but I could build you an app type thing." So, anyways, I was like,
Okay.
"Yeah, like let's get you set up on a dating profile." And I took her out for a little photo shoot, which was really fun. So
Oh,
we went out and went to like a cute little wine bar and got some good pictures with like a nice basket type chair, like those like real nice. And I just set her up with a profile on Match.com. And then I kind of said, "Hey, like you're off to the races a little bit." But then I really started to see what was happening on there. She started to show me some of the encounters that she was having, and some of them were innocuous. And then there were like tons of catfish on there. There were these 35-year-old Instagram models that were out here flirting with my mom in her 60. And she said, "What do you think this is, Sean?" And I said, "I don't know, Mom, like you're great and everything, but like that maybe doesn't seem like a real person?" And then she would have conversations, and goodness, I think dating can be complicated for women at any age, but I think it's particularly bad for women, for example, like maybe in their 60s. The men were sending like these inappropriate messages like ridiculously fast. Like they would match, and like oftentimes like the first message would be like, "Do you want to come over and cuddle?" Things of that
oh
nature, or just
God.
lewd inappropriate things like that. And I think many women will say that they've received inappropriate pictures in an unsolicited manner from men, any woman that's
Yeah.
been on the dating apps for a long time. And so she was receiving stuff like that, which I thought was just disgusting and horrifying. I was
Yeah.
ashamed on behalf of these men. And then, she eventually did match with some guys and did plan to go on some dates. And she did the same thing that you were talking about before when you matched with the guy. He Googled you before the date, as you should. Like I've Googled every single person that I've ever been on a date with as well. And, she was able to sort of find a hint of information that this individual might have a criminal background. And then she went and she figured out how to do a background check for like $30 or something crazy. And like, yeah, he had a pretty concerning criminal past, right? And so like through seeing all of these things, I was like, wow, like I never spent too much time thinking about the dating experience of women. But then when I saw someone like my mom, who, is not particularly tech forward,
Yeah.
trying to figure this all out, I said, there are no tools to really help individuals navigate this. Why can't you look up someone's image? Why does a background check have to be on some sketchy website and cost like $50 to do it, right? There was just a complete lack of tooling. And while dating had just like moved predominantly online, there just hadn't been any sort of services that have like kept up with it. And I don't know, the ecosystem to me has just always felt really unsafe after learning more about this. And so I saw it like impacting my mom. And then I would talk to like my female friends and be like, "Hey, look, like here's what my mom's going through." And I learned that every woman has a story that's like really similar to this, where they've been made to feel uncomfortable, not only on a dating app, but just meeting people in person. Like all
Mhm.
women have been made to feel uncomfortable by men. And as a man, like I think we need to hold ourselves accountable and do better. So anyways, all these types of things were just build up. I think that sort of ultimately became inspiration for what we built.
Well, and I love that your mom is the kind of person who had the presence of mind to go and do the background check, right? Because I got married after dating apps existed, and then I got
Yeah.
divorced and they still existed. So I had a healthy level of awareness that people are tricky. And
Yeah.
so that's why phone call, FaceTime before meeting, only in a public place, blah blah blah. I was prepared not to take people's weirdness personally, and I
Right.
was prepared to understand that it was a dating game. It was a numbers game. But I think if I had been 15 years older, then that might not have been the case. So kudos to your mom for being smart
Yeah.
enough to do that. What was the weirdest experience your mom had in online dating?
Oh, goodness. Where I don't even know where to start. I mean, a
Or is
funny
it
one
just the
is
30-year-olds, like the 25-year-olds? Because they're gross. They're everywhere. The one thing that nobody told me about getting divorced in your 40s is how many people's 25-year-old sons are like, how you doing? And then you're like, I probably made out with your dad once if he was a bouncer in the 90s and they are not deterred. And then you're like, I'm probably on a text chain with your mom right now and they are not deterred.
yeah, no, yeah. I think men are relentless.
They are.
Many of them. You know,
But
many men.
toddlers, like toddlers, 25-year-olds, toddlers.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Well, I think that age also comes with a great deal of entitlement. You
Oh,
know,
God.
it's entitlement, brashness, lack of self awareness.
Yeah, not entitled to
Hopefully they
ride
grow
this
out of it,
ride.
but I don't think this is something that's just a 25-year-old thing. I think I've learned so much about the female dating experience. I probably know more about the female dating experience than any man on the planet, frankly, at this point. And what I've learned is that there are like really kind, healthy men that treat women with a lot of respect. But what you're talking about with those 25-year-old men that are relentless and don't take no for an answer and are pushy, that's something you will see from men at any age. You know, I've heard many stories of women talking about a guy who just keeps sliding in my DMs and saying these like kind of inappropriate things to me, and then I block them, and then they find my phone number and they harass me via text, and then I block them there, and then they go get a burner phone number, and then they follow up with me over there. Then it's email. Like, this is real. This is happening. So to women everywhere, like, this is a real problem that's out there that people I don't think are really aware of.
So, what do you think was your mom's biggest challenge in online dating?
So I think for her, she just wasn't particularly tech savvy, and so for her, online dating was just a new concept. Like, you might not even, I don't think she even knew that people could create fake profiles. Like, why is that a thing? You know, like, people maybe are less familiar with like phishing attempts. You know, I got a
Yeah.
phishing email yesterday. It was a fake email from someone pretending to be Facebook trying to take down our company's Facebook account. And I almost fell for it. And I'm
Oh.
supposed to be like a tech guy, you know? So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's just like lack of understanding that there are people that are trying to take advantage of you online. Once you've been on the dating sites for a while, you kind of understand how they work. You understand, once again, it's a numbers game and there are going to be inappropriate things. And you shouldn't be discouraged if you match with someone and then they don't like message you. Like, that happens. It's all
All
ephemeral
the
and
time.
it's all fake and stuff. And I don't know. I believe in dating apps. I do believe in the power of like being able to connect to you easily with people that are interesting. But I'm also a huge advocate of going out into your community and meeting people with like-minded interests. And as I think about the future, I think we're going to see more and more of that. I think it was all in person, and then we overshifted, over-indexed to dating apps for a long time. And I think we're going to kind of see us go back a little bit more to focusing on meeting people in real life. And then ultimately, I think it'll be a nice balance between the two.
On that topic, this is a bit of a departure. I've had this idea for a while and I don't know why nobody's created it. What if there was a speed dating thing you could do? And it's called weight class. And bear with me.
Okay.
My theory is because of hookup culture and because of all that kind of thing and the prevalence of dating apps and the fact that we can all get in touch with anyone now, people misread who is really accessible to them for the long term. So
Right.
what they think, just because someone will spend a weekend with you in Miami, that person wants a relationship with you. No, they do not, sir. Right? So what if there was a speed dating service? And this is only for people who really want relationships, right? This is not a hookup site,
Right.
but it would have to, that would self-select to begin with. A speed dating service only in major cities where you have to show up, you have to commit to an hour, you have to go on 20 first dates, which are 3 minutes long. And at the end of those first dates, you have to force rank everybody you met
I love it.
from 1 to 20, like who you're most interested in, all the way down to 20 least interested. And then you get invited to the second event, but you're in buckets, top
Ah,
5%. So if 90% of the people you met put you in the top five, then you get to go into bucket one. And if you're in the bottom
yeah.
five, then if you're a billionaire, great, but you're deeply unpleasant and all the women are putting you in the bottom five, because it's just true. They're going to put you in the bottom five if you're just kind of an awful guy. Then you don't
Right.
get invited. Now you're only allowed to date in your relationship weight class.
I love it.
Because the problem is we're all seeing people and thinking everybody's available to us, and they're just not. I mean, I was talking to my cousin the other day, and I was saying, if a 41-year-old, and I'm 47, right? 41-year-old guy who's really handsome, who's as accomplished as I am, who's as financially comfortable as I am, but has no kids, asks me out. It's my job to say thank you, no thank you, sir, because he has a year to waste, and I really don't. And because the probability that we're going to end up together, or that I'm even going to want to introduce him to my kids, is so low
Right.
that really he should be out with a 35-year-old. They can get married, they can go have some kids, they can invite me to the wedding, whatever, right? But for sorting people into categories based on what you're really looking for and based on whether you are relationship minded is, I think, what's lost with the apps. So
Yeah,
forget all the lying, right? But that's my theory. And I would love it if you would start that. So I want to go back to this app, though.
sure.
There was not one particular moment or incident with your mother that inspired you to launch the app? Because there's a difference between seeing your mom's frustration and then going over the tipping point to launching the app. Was there anything specific that made you go take that step?
I think it was just a culmination. My mom was experiencing catfish. She was talking to guys that had criminal backgrounds,
Oh,
receiving these inappropriate messages, right? And so this was over the course of a couple of weeks, I started to realize this. And this was around the time when I started talking to some of my female friends and just asking about their experiences as well. And they were experiencing the same thing. And they also talked a lot about how dating apps provided access to just rampant infidelity. That was a real problem where a lot of men were taking advantage of these dating apps where they were traveling and they were married and they were dating around on these apps, or people were like misrepresenting who they were. And so I just realized this was just a problem that every woman had. And this was around the time where I wanted to start something. Like I wanted to create a technology product that made an impact, that gave back to others. And then this just seemed like a problem worth solving to me. And I've been working on it for over 2 years now. And I continue every day to get up and I care about the problem that we're solving. We're protecting women from emotional abuse, domestic abuse, sexual assault. Each and every day we get a message about how we've really protected a woman. And that to me is really gratifying. And it keeps us going because, starting your own technology company is really hard. We don't have much resourcing or really any funding. So for us, we've just kind of been just trying to figure it all out.
I'm sure. And I mean, like boys are
Yeah.
very protective of their moms. And that's why this touched me. The fact that you saw your mom going through this and you actually did something about it. I mean, I have a 9-year-old and recently he has gained the amount of strength to be able to lift me up off the ground, and which I think is shocking because I didn't have brothers growing up, so I didn't know that boys get their energy so young, get their
Yeah.
strength. But recently he started lifting me up off the ground. But I've also noticed we'll be walking around the streets in New York City and he will actually get kind of physically a little bit protective when people come near
That's
me. And
cool.
I'm like, look at you, you little cartoon character. Look at you.
You
You're
must be
protecting
really proud.
someone. You even know how to button your own pants, but that's adorable. So I just kind of had to
That's
point that
amazing.
out
It
there.
sounds like you're raising a great son, if he's
I don't
protecting
know.
his mom.
I'm trying. I'm trying.
Yeah.
I also want to point out that it's a dating safety app and it hit number 4 on the App Store.
Yeah. It's growing really fast. There's a lot of need for it, it turns out. And yeah, as far as what it does, basically we provide a suite of tools that help women date more safely. And so that ranges for everything from being able to run a background check or a criminal record check or look up someone's phone number and figure out what their real name is. And if they're married, to you can do reverse image searches to make sure that they're like not a catfish and stealing someone's identity. We offer sex offender maps. So you can basically search the US database and make sure that they're not on there. So there's a bunch of tools like that basically provide access to public safety data. And in addition, we provide basically a nationwide anonymous forum where women can share their dating experiences. And so, it can range from, hey, I just got ghosted and, I'm trying to figure out how to get back on my feet afterwards, to you got to watch out for Mike. Mike over here did X, Y, and Z to me, and it made me feel deeply uncomfortable. And so, we have many women that are sharing innocuous stories, but also really intense, heavy stories of sexual assaults, domestic violence, things of that nature to protect other women. So we're basically just trying to create a space for women to find information so they can make informed decisions.
Well, I thought it was worth pointing out that a couple things about this. So the fact that with just the person's phone number and their picture, you can get a real-time background check, you can get a reverse image search, and you can get a search of their phone number and whether, for example, it's on a family plan.
100.
That was fascinating to me. I liked also the fact that you've got the chat room where women can share the information. What it reminded me of was what some of your female friends must have told you about, which is these Facebook groups in all the cities that say, are we dating the
Yeah.
same guy?
Oh, yeah.
I love the fact that you allow women to talk to each other on it. One question that's very important to me is, how much is this being used by men? Because women can be crazy people too.
Yes, women certainly can be crazy. All people have potential to be crazy. So T only lets women on the app. And so,
Okay.
we support, cisgender women, transgender women, non-binary individuals that feel most comfortable in a woman-centered space. But it's women only on the app. Men are not allowed on the app. And the reason for that is because we want it to be a safe, sacred, private space for women to be able to share their stories.
Well, and speaking of safety, I read, I don't know if this is true, but in a comment board somewhere, they said that you cannot screenshot anything in the app. Is that true?
Yeah, so everything's totally anonymous.
That's awesome.
And you can't screenshot anything. So it's completely blocked.
What kind of complaints have you gotten on the app? Either from users or from men outside being like, don't do this or whatever. I don't know. Wah, whatever. What is the complaint?
So we've received many complaints from men.
Mm-hmm.
We receive probably about 3 legal threats a day from different men that are disappointed that women have told largely true stories about them on these apps. And so they are upset that they've done something bad to a woman and then a woman has told people about it. So they don't like that. And so, so we receive many threats from men, and we have a full legal team that helps us navigate those situations. And all of the way that we operate is well within legal guidelines. Of course, we've spent a lot of time to make sure that, we're operating in a way that's compliant. And then, there's also a whole men's rights activism community that doesn't like what we're doing. And so they're constantly trying to tear us down and organize, mass petitions to take us down and mass reporting of us on the app store to try to take us down. So, we have a lot of people that are unhappy about what we're doing. And that's okay with us. We believe this is a public service that we're doing. And we believe that women deserve to be able to share their stories and to be able to have safe, relationships.
Well, and what is the legal crux of it? Is it the argument that you are allowed to share your own experience in a private chat, what is considered a private chat, because you can't screenshot it?
Yeah. So basically, if you post true things online, you're protected legally, as long as what you say is true, no matter where you post it. And so, T has a zero tolerance policy for defamatory content being posted on its app. And so we go to great lengths to make sure that we're preventing defamatory content. We have all sorts of moderation technology that scans all of the content that gets posted to identify anything that seems like hate speech or revenge speech and things of that nature. So things get flagged and we can take that stuff down.
How do you measure the accuracy in the app's findings?
We don't look at every single background check that someone runs for a number of reasons. One, ultimately being privacy. I would say that the research and the validation that we've done is more, I want to say qualitative in nature, where, I've run a bunch of background checks on my friends or the people in my life. And a lot of the users that are close to me, we have them running and using the tools themselves. And what I would say in general is I would say that our accuracy rate is 90 to 95%, really solid. And, if we were to run a background check on you, what we would find is that we'd be able to find probably, I don't know, your address, all of your family members,
all my crimes,
likely divorce and marriage records. Yeah. We'd be able to find if you had any sort of criminal record. So for me, if you ran a criminal record check on me, it would tell you all the parking tickets that I've had. So long story short, it would be impossible for us to know the accuracy on every single person that we look up because we don't actually know what's going on with them. But what we do know is that it tends to be pretty accurate based on what we've seen.
Well, and I think, look, there's a whole other argument to be made that the world is full of people who do not want to believe what they see, right?
It's
you can talk yourself out of any evidence, but if you're going to an app like this, it's just because you want to protect yourself. And I really don't know how you can hold that against someone. To that end, right, you seem to have a larger mission with this. This is not just about starting a tech company, because there's a lot of tech companies you can start, right? And I spent a long time in VC, so I understand that. You're building something that has a lot of legal headwind, right? And you're building it. You knew these people would come after you. You knew that right. It's not like this was not anticipated if you've been in tech for a while. Did you consider or did you attempt to partner with any of the dating apps? Because it just kind of makes sense that if they claim a commitment to our safety and to, finding love, which obviously a lot of them don't. They want us on for as long as possible. It's important we should never find love. But if you did reach out to them, did their business model make background checks unprofitable? Or do you suspect that would have been what it was? To maximize their profit, they have to maximize their subscribers, and male subscribers would not opt into this. Am I making too many assumptions?
No, you are not making too many assumptions at all, and you are making very informed assumptions, is what I would say. So
Okay.
it's a really great question. We have not reached out to any dating apps to partner, and that's for a few reasons. Number one, I've wanted us to just build something really powerful, and then we figured they would come to us when they're ready, and that's what we're starting to see. We have been receiving a lot of business development interest in partnering and investing in tea and acquiring tea. So there's a lot of interest and a lot of buzz around tea more recently. And we do have some executives and some pretty renowned angel investors in the dating space that are helping. They want to facilitate these introductions now. So we're about to start having these conversations for the first time. And I believe that there are a lot of ways that we can partner. And I believe that providing safety tools does create some friction for a dating app user.
Yeah.
Like, do you want someone to be able to run a background check on you? I don't know. Maybe some people would be uncomfortable with that. Me, I wouldn't be. I've got nothing to hide, right? But there will be some bad actors that might be uncomfortable with that happening. And then, if you listen to the earnings calls of Bumble or Match Group, they both talk about safety is kind of their number one priority. But I don't want to be fresh, but I think that there's more that they could do to help.
Yeah.
So our vision is that we can help build some integrations with their dating apps where maybe perhaps they can use some of the tools that we've had, and they can embed them in their products, and people can choose to use them or choose not to use them depending on what they want. And we think it'll make dating safer. But to more specifically answer your question, we haven't tried to partner, but I think it's probably imminent that it'll happen.
What I really hope doesn't happen is someone tries to buy you out to shut you down. Because if you think about the dating model of the business model of dating apps, right? It was something recently that came out with Bumble where a woman said that she had blocked people, and she knew for sure she had blocked, not just swiped left. And they kept showing the same people who she had blocked. And she wrote an email to Bumble saying, please, why are you showing these people? I've already blocked them. And the response was, sometimes we show you people you've already blocked in case you change your mind. And what does that tell you? It's not like there are not other women who that man can be shown to. Someone hit on me on a website relatively, again, maybe right after my divorce. And I looked at his picture, but I could tell it wasn't a catfish. But I remember thinking, there's no way he's the age he's saying. I messaged him and I said, thanks for the super like, but respectfully, if you are 45, I am a hamburger. And he said, haha, you got me. I'm 25. I was like, I didn't get you. I know. So let me just say, there's no way I'm going out with you because
Right.
I could be your mom. But just for the record, am I correct in assuming that the reason you're asking me out is either A, you think women my age are desperate, wrong. B, you think we didn't sow our oats when we were your age with men who look just as good as you, wrong. Or
Right.
C, I would wake up in the morning and my TV and my electronics and all my jewelry would be gone, right? Like, which of the three is the correct option? And, I was bored one night and he responded with a rather long explanation of how he felt like all the women that were his age didn't believe him when he said he didn't want to get married and have kids. And so he said,
Interesting.
rather than dating someone and spending another year with someone and then having her heart broken, why not date someone who already has kids, who doesn't want to have more kids, because I find you equally attractive and this and that, whatever. And I said, that's a good argument. Okay, bye-bye, little boy.
Either the nicest person you've ever met or completely full of it. One of
Right,
those two
right,
things.
right. But it is a nice argument, right? But I mean, the
It's
point is, people will lie. And I guess when I try to puzzle through the long term for the T app, my thought is it doesn't stand alone. It ends up being a part of something larger. Or you
yeah.
spread into the speed dating events I suggested, right?
That's what we should do. Yeah,
I'll
no, I
co-host the New
think
York one.
yeah, I think the reality that's out there is if you look at online dating, like online dating is experiencing the first declines in user bases ever. Right? It was just like for a long time, and now it's kind of like plateaued, and we're kind of here. They are no longer these growth assets right now. In fact, you would argue if you look at their stock prices, they're in decline right now. I think there's two reasons why. One, I think it's fatigue, right? You've been on a dating app before. I've been on a dating app before. A lot of swiping with not many actual dates, right? People are just tired of that. That's number
Yeah,
one.
people are
And
using
number
them
two
for less
is
dates now.
what's that?
People are using them for less dates now.
I think people use them for validation is what I think people are really using dating apps for. It's like, does this person find me attractive? You know? And so that's why matching with someone on a dating app should be zero signal as far as I'm
Yeah,
concerned.
100%.
There's a lot of guys are just swiping right, you know, and
On
like
everyone.
they're just looking to find a match. It's a numbers game for them. I think women are much more intentional, which is why if you look at a lot of the data, you know, I think 5%. I think it's like I'm going to make up these numbers now, but like there's like 5% of men that are getting like 90% of the matches on dating apps, right?
Yeah.
There's this whole
That's what I hear. It's
imbalance of
something like that.
hypergamy that exists. That's a whole other issue, which is I think a lot of the problem with dating
Oh,
apps.
for sure. For sure. And you know, I'm Indian. I was born and raised here, but I very much grew up in a mentality that was born out of arranged marriage of my parents' generation, which was you look for a match. When your children are ready to get married, if she doesn't have a graduate degree, you don't match her with someone with a graduate degree. Like it's not how it. If she's a solid six, you look for a solid six. Now, if she's a 10, you maybe look for a man who's a little bit more accomplished, but he can't be as attractive. It was a market. It was a clear market, right?
Right.
For mating and for kind of what's offered, but by and large it was about finding a match. And that's no longer the case.
Yeah.
It's really about finding someone who you can trade something with.
I think that's absolutely right. I think things certainly have changed.
So, having run this app now for what, 2 years? It's been
Yeah.
2023. Having run this app now for 2 years, are you more or less confident in humanity?
That's a really good question. I think I'm less confident in humanity. Well, here's what I would say is I've seen the worst side of humanity. I have. I've seen the worst side of humanity, and I believe there are more good people out there than bad people out there, but I also believe that there are some really evil people. And that was news to me. I didn't really understand the extent of how evil some people were and how dangerous some people were. So that's been really eye-opening for me and really difficult to understand, and it makes me pretty emotional understanding how dangerous it is out there for women. So I would say it has made me feel less positive about humanity. But at the same time, too, I know a lot of really good men also. Like so, I don't know. I think it's just I've seen too much. I've seen too much of the negative, and so I think I'm probably a bit jaded. But I don't think being jaded is a bad thing. Like I think there's a lack of information about how unsafe and how dangerous it is to be a woman. I think there's a complete lack. I think all women probably understand it, but I don't think any men really understand it. And I take that back. I've connected with many men that do care about this mission and this cause after starting T. And there are men that do give back, that are compassionate and do really care. And then there are just some that are just completely unaware. And so I don't know. I mean, there's certain things that I'm an expert in, and there's certain things that I'm an ignorant in. I wish men would get more educated about this. And I guess that's part of my responsibility is to help get them there.
Well, there's caring, and then there's caring enough to really be aware of it. Because one thing that really got to me was it last year? Do you choose the bear? Do you choose the man or the bear? That
Yeah.
came
Yep.
out
Yep.
in social media. I think it was last year. And I was genuinely surprised how many men didn't understand we would choose the bear. I
Oh
was
yeah.
genuinely surprised. And like you, I know there are wonderful men everywhere. My father's a wonderful man. My uncles are wonderful men. My cousins are surrounded by wonderful men. Never doubted that they were wonderful men, but I always knew that one bad man can undo 100 good men. That's not a
That's exactly the
surprise,
problem.
right? And I remember thinking up front, well, why isn't anybody asking any of these men if they'd rather their daughter be left with a man or a bear in the woods? Because that's a clear answer. No man is going to say the man. No
Yep.
man. But why
Mhm.
were they surprised why were they angry and surprised that the women all said, I choose the bear?
That's exactly right. I couldn't put it any better. And I think I've talked to men that don't like what T stands for. And then I'll say, but should your sister or your mom, should they have access to T? Like, do you think they deserve to have this information? And they then like, well, absolutely. Yeah. Like I would want my mom to be protected. I would want my sister to be protected or anyone they care about. So I don't know. I think a lot of this is just like, these are just shifts in society that I think just need to occur where, before the internet age, there was a complete lack of accountability because you couldn't really track what someone had done or document what someone had done, and things have changed. And the tools that society uses need to change with it. And so, we believe what we're doing is here to stay.
And by the way, one woman who maybe is annoyed that you rejected her and then she posts something untrue will not be a pattern. It will be one, right? And I'm sure
Right.
there are tons of men who would say Poonam is deeply unpleasant. Sure, fine, say what you want. I don't. If you lined up 90 men I've been on a date with, generally they would say, "Oh, she talks too much, but she's a nice lady, whatever." Right? That would be the
Mhm.
common theme. The common theme would not be
Right.
she's scary. I didn't feel safe with her.
Yeah.
Also, I'm 5'2", so they're not going to feel unsafe. I do want to know though. You talk about having seen some of the worst of humanity. What are some of the scariest things that the app has uncovered?
I mean, I could tell you hundreds of stories about women who thought that they were in a relationship with the guy who was married and had an entire separate family. That happens once a week. I hear about a
Wow.
unique story about that. I've heard stories of women that have gotten married to men who have pretended that they were dying and they've made up all these crazy stories. Yeah, this is like a thing. Like, this is a pretty common thing that people do. And they'll make up these crazy stories about how they're in the process of passing away, and they'll create all these crazy wills and things. And I've had women like quit their jobs and go on like disability leave to, or I forget what it's called, to like help their partner and stuff, and then end up in all sorts of fraud situations, get dragged into it because like the men have lied and pretended that, they were dying, things of that nature. So yeah, no, there's like really, really seriously scary pathological liars that are out there, and they're amongst us. And the craziest part about it is it's often the individuals that are most charismatic and charming that are the ones that have the greatest propensity to lie, and I think we've seen that. I don't want to get too dark, but like when you look at many of like
No,
the
go ahead.
serial killers in the past, like the Ted Bundys, like these were like incredibly charismatic, handsome men that like could charm you, right? And then these are the ones. So it's not to say that every charming and charismatic man is a bad individual. I mean, that's not what I'm trying to say. But I guess what I am trying to say is I think people would be shocked if they understood. There have been many, popular stories that have come out in the media over the last 5 years. Like a lot of people may have heard of like the Tinder swindler, where like a man was basically pretending to be really wealthy and he was convincing women to like, oh, my money is all tied up. Can you wire me money to save me? That happens once a week. And so we're trying to connect people that have had similar experiences so they can help each other navigate. And I don't think I've ever been on a date or really had any sort of like romantic encounter with a woman where I didn't think that that woman was like had really pure intentions and like
Hmm.
really wanted much other tthan to try to find a life
Their
partner.
person. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I don't think I think if you asked 100 women, I would say 100, probably 99 of them would say that's not been the experience that I've had with men. And so I forget where I was going with this. I
Well,
got totally off
it's
track.
made you reflect. It's kind of woken you up to what it's like for us.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's just a total imbalance between the way that straight men approach relationships and the way that straight women approach relationships. I think they just have different things that they want out of
Yeah.
them. And it's a shame that incentives were not more aligned.
And that signaling is not clear. And I think it could get frustrating and it could get upsetting and it could get deeply expensive to
Oh,
keep
yeah,
taking
that's for
women
sure.
out on dates who
Yeah.
aren't your woman. And I'm just of an age where men pay, their chivalry is a thing, whatever, nothing wrong with
Should
it.
be.
But with all of this, I think that there's a lot of mixed signals and it can get really dangerous. So I'm
Oh,
glad
yeah.
that your app exists. What do you think is the future of all this? Do you think it's going to hit a point where people are just going to refuse to do
Yeah.
any of this?
100%. I think we're not, I think we're closer to that than a lot of people would care to admit. And every single day in the app, women are posting about how I'm done with dating apps. If you look at marriage rates are in like extreme decline compared to in the past right now. And people are getting married at an older and older age than they had in the past. I think people are becoming more comfortable being alone. I think people have less tolerance for BS than they used to have in the past. And so, yeah, I think there's going to be huge declines in mating and birth rates and marriage rates. I think all of these things are going to happen.
Well, and then the question is it a good thing or a bad thing? I did a podcast episode, I don't know, maybe about 4 months ago that was actually very popular with a gentleman who is researching the child free by choice movement. They surveyed people, and the estimate is up to 2% of adults in America, ages something like 18 to 80, are now identifying and saying, I'm child free by choice. All for people not doing anything that doesn't serve their peace. I'm all for people, but I do think it's a shame when it really is, I agree with you, a few bad actors makes people feel like they have to opt out of the potential for the type of connection that I think is the stuff of living.
I agree 100%. Like we believe in helping women find love safely is all we really want to do. Because like you said, I think it's one of the most rewarding and beautiful experiences a person can have.
And your mom did partner up?
Say that again?
Did your mom partner up?
My mom is not partnered up. No, she lives in rural Rhode Island currently. There aren't many people to partner with, but we're still trying.
You got to keep working on that because that would be my favorite story to ever come out of the Tea app.
That's true. Man starts
that
help his mom date safely, and then helps his mom
exactly,
find
and then
love.
helps his mom find her guy, and then the next article would be T tops it again. Dueling speed dating events held in San Francisco and New York on the same night because I hosted the one in New York. And everybody who comes has to opt into a background check, men and women.
I like
and
it.
we have to have at least 5 positive references from people who have gone out on a date with us before
I like
to get
it.
in. What do you think?
Yeah.
Deal?
I actually, this is funny. I used to date sort of a journalist, and she recently sent me a note and said, "Hey, I'm trying to compile Yelp reviews on my past situationships. Will you write up a Yelp review for me so I can post it on my Substack?" So I'm really excited to write her review soon. So yeah, I think not the funniest thing. I thought it was too cute.
So now I'm thinking I have to go up on like Instagram today or something and I have to say, if you had only 24 hours, do you think you could find 5 people you've dated in the past who would give you a positive Yelp review? Like worthy of dating? And then how many people would raise their hand?
That's a good question. And if the answer to that is no, you might want to look yourself in the mirror and think about your past dating behavior. And what I would say after...
Maybe you need a timeout. Yeah.
Maybe you need a timeout. Yeah. And I don't know, like after starting T, it's really challenged me to really think about my dating behavior in particular. And I feel like I pay a lot more attention maybe to it now than maybe I would in the past. I think I understand the female experience a bit better. And I think men just need to communicate more, honestly. I think they just need to be more upfront, be more honest about where they're at, where their intentions are. And I think everyone would just be a little bit happier if everyone was just a little bit more honest about what they were doing.